They called her the Forgotten Wolf. For 5 years, Leora Silverfang had walked the cold marble halls of her ancestral home, with downcast eyes and silent footsteps, a ghost in her own palace. The servants who had once bowed before her now looked through her as if she were made of smoke. The nobles who had once sought her favor now sneered as she refilled their goblets, her hands steady, even as their cruel words cut like winter frost. "More wine, Omega," they would command, deliberately spilling drops on the floor for her to clean. She would kneel without complaint, her dark hair falling forward to hide the fire that still burned in her eyes. They thought her broken, this daughter of the slaughtered Alpha, this princess stripped of title and rank, branded Omega by royal decree. They believed the story they had written for her, that she was weak, submissive, defeated, but beneath her servant's garb beat the heart of a wolf who remembered moonlight and power, who carried ancient magic in her blood. At night, alone in her cramped quarters, Leora would press her palm against the cold stone walls and whisper the old songs, feeling something stir deep within her veins, something the Alpha King Cassian had failed to recognize when he conquered her territories and claimed her crown. Tonight, as the blood moon rose for the 5th time since her father's throat had been torn open beneath the same crimson light, Leora felt that hidden power surge like a tide too long held back. She watched her reflection in a cracked mirror, the silver beginning to glow beneath her skin. 5 years, she whispered, her voice carrying an echo that hadn't been there before. 5 years of patience, of learning their weaknesses while they thought me weak. Tonight, the Alpha King would summon her to sing for his court's amusement. He would expect tears, submission, the final humiliation of a fallen princess. Instead, he would learn what happens when you mistake patience for weakness, when you underestimate the wolf who wears her chains like jewelry, biding her time in darkness. For some wolves are born to rule, and some are born to change the very meaning of power. Before we begin, remember to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. Every day, a new story awaits you. Now, let us begin. The palace walls remembered Leora, even if its people did not. 5 years had passed since the fall of Silverfang, since she'd watched her father's throat torn open beneath the moonlight, since she'd been dragged through these same marble corridors, not as Princess Leora Silverfang, heir to the Northern Territories, but as spoils of war. She kept her eyes fixed on the polished floor as she carried the silver tray of wine goblets through the great hall. The court of Alpha King Cassian Blood Moon was in full celebration, commemorating the anniversary of their conquest. Her conquest. "More wine, Omega," a voice called, deliberately dropping a goblet to the floor with a metallic clang. "Clean that up." Leora knelt without hesitation, gathering the shattered crystal with practiced movements. A sharp edge sliced her finger, blood welling to the surface. She didn't flinch. 5 years, Lord Anton declared loudly enough for her to hear, and the mighty Silverfangs are nothing but servants and concubines. How the North has fallen. Laughter rippled through the gathered nobles, but Leora remained expressionless. They expected tears, perhaps even a flash of anger, any sign that the wild northern blood still ran hot in her veins. But she had learned patience in darkness. As she rose, her gaze inadvertently met the Alpha Kings across the hall. Cassian Blood Moon, with his raven hair and eyes like winter frost, sat relaxed upon the throne that should have been her father's. For the briefest moment, something passed between them. Curiosity, perhaps. Recognition. He had been barely 25 when he conquered her pack, young for a king, but already feared throughout the territories. Now 30, he wore his power like a second skin, comfortable in his dominance. Leora quickly lowered her eyes and continued her duties. Tonight was not the night. Not yet. "I hear she used to sing," someone said as she passed. The little princess had quite the voice before her father's throat was opened. "Indeed." Cassian's smooth voice cut through the murmurs, silencing the room. "I'd forgotten that talent." Leora's steps faltered. "Omega," he called, the command in his voice impossible to ignore. "Come here." The tray trembled slightly in her hands as she approached the dais. 5 years of careful invisibility, of being nothing more than a shadow in the palace she once called home. And now the Alpha King remembered her existence. "Your Majesty," she murmured, keeping her eyes downcast. "They say you sing," Cassian said, lounging on his throne with casual arrogance. "Entertain us." The court quieted, all eyes turning to watch the humiliation of the fallen princess. Lady Helena, the king's favored companion, smiled cruelly from her place beside the throne. "What shall I sing, your majesty?" Leora asked, her voice barely audible. Cassian's smile was sharp with malice. "Why, a song of surrender, of course. Sing us how the North fell." A test, then. Did he suspect? Had she somehow revealed herself? For 5 long years, Leora had hidden the truth, that on the night of her 18th birthday, mere days before her pack's fall, she had experienced her first shift not as the beta wolf everyone expected, but as something else entirely. Her father had recognized it immediately, the rare gift that appeared once in a generation, always on a blood moon. A moon singer. The court waited, expectant. Lady Helena's smirk widened. Leora placed the tray on a nearby table and closed her eyes. When she began to sing, her voice was soft at first, a melody of loss and sorrow that drew every ear. She sang of snow and blood, of wolves running beneath moonlight, of a kingdom shattered. The notes hung in the air, crystalline and pure. As her voice strengthened, candle flames throughout the hall flickered in rhythm with her song. Several courtiers shifted uncomfortably, sensing something in the music that touched the primal part of their wolves. She opened her eyes, careful to keep them lowered, though she could feel Cassian's stare intensifying. His scent shifted subtly, curiosity becoming wariness. "Enough," he commanded. But Leora was already concluding her song, the final note fading like a dying breath. The hall remained silent for several heartbeats, caught in the spell she had woven. Then Lady Helena laughed, breaking the tension. "How maudlin," she declared. "Though I suppose we should expect nothing less from a broken Omega." Cassian studied Leora with narrowed eyes. "You may continue your duties," he said finally. She curtsied and retreated, relief and disappointment warring within her. Not tonight, then. The moon had other plans. Later, as midnight approached and the celebration continued, Leora slipped away to the servants' quarters. The small room she shared with 3 other girls was empty. They would be working until dawn. Perfect. She lifted a loose floorboard beneath her pallet, revealing a small bundle wrapped in faded blue silk, her mother's colors. Inside lay her single treasure, a curved silver dagger, its blade etched with ancient runes of her house. A ceremonial weapon, meant for the coronation she would never have. Tonight marked not just 5 years since Silverfang's fall, it was also the 5th blood moon since her first shift, the time when her power would reach its peak. A soft knock at the door startled her. Hastily rewrapping the dagger, she shoved it back into its hiding place. "Enter," she called, smoothing her simple servant's dress. The door opened to reveal Ren, one of the kitchen boys. Like her, he had been born to the Silverfang pack, though he had only been 12 when their home fell. His parents had both died in the initial assault. "Princess," he whispered, closing the door behind him. "Don't call me that," she warned, though her tone was gentle. "The walls have ears. They're all too drunk to listen tonight," Ren replied, his eyes bright with excitement. "Is it true? Will it happen at midnight?" Leora sighed. Too many knew of her plan already. Ren, old Marwyn who tended the herb gardens, and 4 others from their fallen pack who had survived as servants. 6 people who could betray her, intentionally or not. "Perhaps," she said noncommittally, "but nothing is certain. The others are ready." Ren insisted. "We've been waiting 5 years for this night." Leora felt the weight of their expectations pressing down on her shoulders. They believed in her, in the power that had awakened on her 18th birthday, just days before Cassian's armies breached their walls. Power she had barely begun to understand before being forced to conceal it. "The blood moon rises in 1 hour," she said finally. "When it reaches its zenith, I'll make my way to the Ancestors' Hall, the sacred chamber where generations of alphas had communed with the spirits of their predecessors, including her father. It was rarely used now. Cassian preferred more direct displays of power to ancient rituals. "We'll create the diversion as planned," Ren promised, his young face solemn. After he left, Leora sat in silence, feeling the approaching moonrise like a pressure building in her blood. Tonight would change everything, for better or worse. When the hour came, she moved through the palace shadows with practiced stealth. The celebration had wound down, with most nobles retired to their chambers or passed out in the Great Hall. Guards stood at their posts, but their attention was drawn to the sudden commotion in the kitchens. Ren's diversion, right on schedule. The Ancestors' Hall lay deep within the palace's oldest section, its entrance flanked by stone wolves with eyes of amber crystal. In Silverfang's glory days, only the Alpha and their heir were permitted entry. Now, dust covered the ancient carvings, and the sconces remained unlit. Leora slipped inside, closing the heavy door behind her. Moonlight streamed through the circular skylight above, illuminating the circular chamber with silver-blue radiance. At the center stood a raised dais of polished black stone, carved with the symbols of all 12 major packs. Her heart pounded as she stepped onto the platform. This was sacrilege for an Omega, but she had never truly been one. Her status had been another lie, another mask to wear while she bided her time. Drawing the ceremonial dagger, she pricked her palm and let 3 drops of blood fall onto the Silverfang sigil etched into the stone. Then she raised her face to the blood moon and began to sing. This song was different from the one she had performed earlier. Older, wilder, in a language few remembered. The words had come to her in dreams, taught by voices she could not name but somehow recognized. The song of moonlight and shadow, of Alpha and Omega, of balance restored. As her voice resonated through the chamber, the moonlight intensified, focusing into a beam that enveloped her completely. The air grew heavy with power, pressing against her skin. Then, abruptly, the door to the Ancestors' Hall burst open. Cassian Bloodmoon stood in the entrance, his eyes blazing alpha gold, his expression a mixture of fury and disbelief. "What have you done?" he demanded, stalking forward. But it was too late. The ritual was complete. The power awakened. Leora met his gaze directly for the first time in 5 years, no longer hiding the wolf within. Her eyes glowed not gold like an alpha's, nor blue like a beta's, but silver, the mark of a moonsinger. "I've remembered who I am," she answered, her voice layered with harmonic power. The Alpha King lunged forward, but the moonlight between them solidified, becoming a barrier he could not penetrate. He slammed against it with a snarl of frustration. "Impossible," he growled. "You're an Omega." Leora stepped down from the dais, the silver light following her like a cloak. "I was never an Omega, Cassian Bloodmoon. You simply needed to believe I was." For the first time since she had known him, uncertainty flickered across the Alpha King's face. "What are you?" he demanded. "I am what comes when balance is broken," she replied, the words not entirely her own. "I am the North's vengeance." The ground beneath them trembled, and cracks appeared in the ancient stone floor. The blood moon's light intensified until the entire hall blazed with crimson-silver fire. Cassian backed away, his wolf instincts finally overwhelming his human pride. For all his strength, for all his armies and conquests, he had never encountered power like this. "The Silverfang throne is mine by right of conquest," he growled, though his voice lacked conviction. "And what is mine by birthright?" Leora countered, advancing step by step. "What did you take from me, Alpha King? From my people?" The stone wolves flanking the entrance shuddered, their amber eyes beginning to glow. Throughout the palace, howls began to rise, not of living wolves, but something older. In that moment, Cassian Bloodmoon, conqueror of the North, slayer of Alpha Silverfang, ruler of 3 territories, recognized true power, and for the first time in his life, the Alpha King took a step back in submission. "You can't control this," he warned, but fear edged his words. "Whatever you've awakened, I am not awakening it," Leora interrupted, raising her bleeding palm. "I am becoming it." The blood moon reached its zenith, and everything changed. The palace shook as if the earth itself had awakened, ancient stone groaning beneath the pressure of Leora's unleashed power. Tapestries swayed on the walls, dust raining from ceiling arches untouched for centuries. Throughout the royal quarters, wolves stirred in their sleep, whimpering as something primal and forgotten pulled at their blood. In the Ancestors' Hall, Cassian Bloodmoon remained frozen, watching as silver light spiraled around Leora's form. The blood moon above cast her in crimson shadow, her silhouette seeming to shift between woman and wolf, between flesh and something altogether more elemental. 5 years, she said, her voice resonating with harmonics that made his wolf cower. 5 years I served you, watched you sit upon my father's throne, wear my mother's crown. Your father challenged me, Cassian growled, struggling to maintain his composure. His death was honorable. Leora's laugh held no warmth. Honorable? You attacked during our sacred moon ceremony, when half our warriors were in ritual trance. You slaughtered elders and pups alike. The spoils of war are not what you think they are," she interrupted, taking another step forward. The silver light surrounding her pulsed, and Cassian found himself forced to one knee, his body responding to a dominance his mind refused to acknowledge. Rage flashed across his features, his eyes burning gold as he fought against the compulsion. "What magic is this?" he snarled, muscles straining. "No Omega can command an Alpha." "I told you I was never an Omega." Leora circled him slowly. "My father knew what I would become. Why do you think he kept my true nature hidden, even from our own people? He feared what would happen if the other Alphas discovered a Moonsinger had been born to Silverfang." Understanding dawned in Cassian's eyes. "Moonsinger," he repeated, the word falling like a curse. "A myth, a fairy tale to frighten pups. All myths have their roots in truth, Alpha King." She knelt before him, bringing their faces level, close enough that he could see the silver light flowing in the veins beneath her skin. "Did you never wonder why the ancient packs had a 13th Alpha? One who wore no crown but could command them all?" Outside, clouds swirled around the blood moon, drawn by currents that had nothing to do with natural weather. The palace guards had abandoned their posts, some running in confusion, others drawn inexorably toward the ancestors' hall, pulled by a call they couldn't comprehend, but couldn't ignore. Cassian's jaw tightened, tendons standing out along his neck as he continued to fight her influence. "If what you say is true," he managed, "why wait 5 years? Why serve as a lowly Omega when you could have claimed your power sooner?" A valid question. Leora stood, moving toward the circular pool at the chamber's center, where moonlight reflected in still water. "A Moonsinger's power awakens in stages," she explained. "First on the blood moon of her 18th year, then strengthening with each subsequent blood moon. Tonight marks the 5th, the culmination." She looked back at him over her shoulder. "I needed time, to learn control, to understand the voices of our ancestors, to plan." "To what end?" Cassian demanded. "Revenge? Will you slaughter me and my court as you believe I did yours?" The question hung in the air between them, weighty with possibility. 5 years of servitude, of humiliation, of watching her people suffer under his rule. No one would blame her for exacting bloody retribution. Leora dipped her fingers in the moon pool, sending ripples across its surface. "What do you know of balance, Cassian Bloodmoon?" His brow furrowed at the unexpected question. "Speak plainly. The wolf packs have always existed in balance. 12 territories, 12 alphas. But in ancient times, when ambition outweighed wisdom, when one pack sought to dominate all others, the moon herself would choose a vessel." She raised her wet fingertips, and the water droplets hung suspended in the air, transforming into tiny, glowing spheres of light. A Moonsinger. Neither Alpha nor Omega, but something beyond both. "And what is their purpose, these chosen ones?" Cassian asked, his voice low. Leora closed her hand, and the light vanished. To restore balance. Before Cassian could respond, the doors to the Ancestors' Hall burst open again. 6 royal guards rushed in, led by Commander Darius, Cassian's most loyal officer. Their eyes widened at the scene before them, their Alpha King on his knees, surrounded by otherworldly light, facing a servant girl who somehow radiated more power than any wolf they'd ever encountered. "Your Majesty," Darius called, drawing his sword. "Hold," Cassian commanded, his voice strained. "Do not approach." But the commander's protective instincts overrode caution. He charged forward, blade aimed at Leora's heart. The sword never reached its target. Midway across the chamber, Darius froze, his body suspended in silver light. One by one, the other guards met the same fate, until all 6 warriors hung immobilized in the air. "Your loyalty is admirable," Leora told them, "but misplaced. Your Alpha has broken the ancient laws of conquest. The blood of innocence stains his reign. Release them," Cassian ordered, struggling again to stand. "Your quarrel is with me, not my people." Leora considered him with sudden interest. Despite everything, he sought to protect his subordinates. Perhaps there was more to the Alpha King than she had allowed herself to see. With a gentle gesture, she lowered the guards to the floor. They remained frozen, conscious but unable to move. "You speak of balance," Cassian said carefully. "Not vengeance. What exactly do you want, Leora Silverfang? I want what was stolen. She approached him again, power radiating from her in palpable waves. Not just from me, but from all my people. I want justice. And what does justice look like to a moonsinger? He asked, meeting her gaze directly despite his vulnerable position. The question gave her pause. 5 years she had waited, planned, dreamed of this moment. In her darkest hours, those dreams had been blood-soaked. Cassian's head mounted on the palace walls, his inner circle executed in the same clearing where her father had died. But as her power had grown, as the ancestors' voices had become clearer in her mind, her understanding had shifted. In the old days, she said finally, when a pack was conquered unjustly, the Moonsinger would command a trial of 7 moons. Recognition flashed in Cassian's eyes. The ancient rite of redemption. You know your history. My father insisted upon it. A muscle ticked in his jaw. 7 challenges, 7 chances to prove one's worth or atone for one's crimes. Leora nodded. Pass the trials, and your reign continues, legitimized by ancient law. Fail, and I forfeit my throne and my life, he finished. That's your justice? My submission to trials designed by my enemy? The trials are not designed by me, Leora corrected. They are set by the ancestors themselves, based on the imbalance that must be corrected. Neither of us will know what they are until each moon rises. Outside the hall, more guards had gathered, drawn by the commotion. Lady Helena stood among them, her face pale with shock as she peered through the doorway. This is madness, she declared. Guards, seize that Omega. None moved. The command in Leora's blood was stronger than any loyalty to the king's consort. Cassian's eyes flickered between Leora and his paralyzed guards. And if I refuse this trial, then I unleash the full power of the blood moon here and now, she answered simply. I cannot say what would happen then. The oldest songs speak of mountains crumbling, of forests burned to ash, of packs scattered to the winds. You would destroy your own home, your own people? I would not be the one destroying anything, Leora said. The power seeks balance, Cassian Blood Moon. One way or another it will find it. For several long moments the Alpha King said nothing. The palace continued to tremble around them, stone wolves along the walls weeping tears of amber light. In the reflection pool, images shifted and changed. Battles long forgotten, coronations of alphas long dead, the rise and fall of dynasties that had shaped the 12 territories. Finally, Cassian spoke. I accept the trial of 7 moons. A collective gasp rose from the gathered witnesses. Lady Helena pushed forward, her voice shrill with disbelief. My king, you cannot be serious. She is nothing. A serving girl, a conquered wolf. She is a moonsinger, Cassian replied, his voice holding a note of resignation. And I am bound by laws older than my crown. Leora raised her hands, and silver light blazed around them both, forming a circle that none could enter. Then hear me, Alpha King. By the power vested in me by the blood moon, by the spirits of the ancestors who watch from beyond the veil, I invoke the trial of 7 moons. The words held power, each syllable resonating through the chamber like the toll of a bell. The floor beneath them illuminated, ancient runes appearing in spirals that surrounded their feet. For 7 moons, you will be tested, Leora continued, the words flowing through her from somewhere beyond. 7 challenges to prove your worth as a ruler, to atone for the blood spilled unjustly, to restore what was broken. And if I succeed, Cassian asked, still kneeling but with his head held high, then your reign continues, blessed by the old laws. The conquered territories remain yours, but governed justly, in accordance with the ancient covenant between Alpha and Pack. And if I fail, Leora's eyes gleamed silver bright, then you forfeit your claim, your crown, and your life. The runes beneath them flared, searing themselves into the stone. The trial was set, the ancient magic binding them both to its terms. Slowly, the compulsion holding Cassian eased. He rose to his feet, his natural authority returning as the immediate effect of Leora's power receded. The guards, too, found themselves released, though none dared approach the glowing circle. The first trial begins tomorrow night, Leora stated. When the moon rises, Cassian straightened his shoulders, once again every inch the Alpha King despite the night's revelations. And until then, we prepare. She gestured, and the silver light surrounding them dimmed, though it did not disappear entirely. Your reign continues, but know that I am watching. Harm any of my people, attempt to flee these lands, and the trial ends immediately with your failure. Lady Helena rushed to Cassian's side as soon as the barrier fell, her hands fluttering over him as if checking for injuries. This is outrageous, she hissed. You cannot possibly honor this farce of ancient superstition. Cassian caught her wrists firmly. Enough, Helena. He looked past her to Leora. Where will you go now? Surely not back to the servants' quarters. A fair question. Leora glanced toward the door, where Ren stood with wide eyes alongside several other Silverfang survivors who had been drawn to the hall. They looked at her with awe and uncertainty, seeing their princess transformed into something they barely recognized. The North Tower, she decided. It was Silverfang's traditional residence in this palace. I trust that won't be a problem. It was a deliberate challenge, testing the boundaries of their new arrangement. The North Tower had stood empty since the conquest, sealed by Cassian's orders. Some said it was out of respect for the fallen Alpha. Others, that the tower was haunted by Silverfang ghosts. Cassian's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Commander Darius will escort you. The tower will be opened and provisioned as befits your station. Leora inclined her head, neither submissive nor overtly dominant, the gesture of one equal to another. Until tomorrow night, Alpha King. As she turned to leave, followed by the awestruck Silverfang servants, Cassian's voice stopped her at the threshold. Leora. She looked back, one eyebrow raised. 5 years you served in my court, and I never truly saw you, he said, his expression unreadable. That will not happen again. It wasn't quite an apology, nor was it a threat. Somewhere in between, perhaps. A recognition. No, she agreed. It won't. Later, as dawn approached and the blood moon finally set, Leora stood at the window of the North Tower's highest chamber. The room had been her mother's solar, where Queen Alara Silverfang had received petitioners and taught her daughter the responsibilities of leadership. Dust covered the furnishings, but otherwise, it remained untouched. Cassian had sealed the tower with everything intact. A soft knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. "Enter," she called. Ren appeared, carrying a tray with bread, cheese, and wine. His eyes still held that mixture of awe and uncertainty. "I thought you might be hungry, my lady." He hesitated over the address, clearly unsure how to treat her now. "Thank you, Ren." She smiled, trying to put him at ease. "And I'm still just Leora to you." He placed the tray on a small table by the window. "Is it true what they're saying? That you made the Alpha King kneel? It's more complicated than that. Will you take back the throne? Will we go home to the Northern Territories?" Questions she had asked herself countless times during her years of servitude. Now that the moment had arrived, her path forward seemed both clearer and more complex than she had imagined. "The trial of 7 moons will decide many things," she said carefully. "Not just Cassian's fate, but all of ours." Ren frowned. "But he's our enemy. He killed your father, conquered our lands." "Yes." Leora turned back to the window, where the first light of dawn painted the mountains gold. "But vengeance and justice are not always the same thing, Ren. The Moonsinger's purpose is to restore balance, not to shift power from one tyrant to another." "You could never be a tyrant," he protested. She gave him a sad smile. "Power changes people, even power born of the moon." After Ren left, Leora opened the carved wooden chest at the foot of her mother's bed. Inside lay the ceremonial robes of Silverfang, silver-white fur trimmed with blue, unworn since the night of the conquest. Beneath them, wrapped in silk, was her mother's circlet. Not a crown, but the traditional headpiece of the Alpha's mate, set with moonstones and sapphires. She lifted it carefully, memories flooding back, her mother placing it on her head during her 16th birthday celebration, telling her that one day she would wear a crown of her own. That future had been stolen when Cassian's armies breached their walls. Or had it simply been delayed, transformed into something her parents could never have foreseen? In the reflection of the window glass, Leora saw herself changed, no longer the serving girl with downcast eyes, nor quite the princess she had been raised to be. The Moonsinger's power had left its mark, silver light still faintly visible beneath her skin, her eyes holding an otherworldly gleam. 7 moons, she whispered to her reflection. 7 chances for justice. 7 trials to restore balance. Outside, the palace was stirring, nobles and servants alike waking to a world fundamentally altered. By nightfall, everyone in the 12 territories would know that a moonsinger had risen, that the Alpha King had been challenged, that the ancient laws had been invoked. What none of them yet realized, not Cassian, not her own people, was that the trials would test Leora just as surely as they would test the Alpha King. For the balance the ancestors sought was not as simple as dethroning a conqueror. The true test lay in what would rise from the ashes of their shared past. As the sun cleared the mountains, Leora Silverfang, princess, servant, moonsinger, placed her mother's circlet upon her head and prepared to face the day that would begin her new journey. The first trial awaited, and with it, the first step toward whatever future the 7 moons would forge. Night fell swiftly, shadows stretching across the palace grounds like grasping fingers. Tension hung in the air, thick as summer storm clouds, as wolves from all stations gathered in the central courtyard. News had spread throughout the day, whispers of ancient magic, of the serving girl who commanded moonlight, of the Alpha King brought to his knees. Nobles who had sneered at Leora for years now watched with wary eyes as she descended from the North Tower. She wore her mother's ceremonial robes, silver white against the darkness, the moonstone circlet gleaming in her dark hair. Behind her followed the surviving members of Silverfang, no longer dressed as servants, but in the blue and silver of their heritage, hastily assembled from trunks unsealed after 5 long years. Across the courtyard, Cassian emerged from the main palace, flanked by his elite guard and inner circle. He had abandoned his usual finery for the traditional garb of a warrior king, leather armor reinforced with steel plates bearing the blood moon sigil, a crimson cape fastened at his shoulders with wolf's head clasps. The crowd parted before them both, creating a path to the ancient stone circle at the courtyard's center. 12 pillars surrounded the circle, each carved with the sigil of one of the major packs. A 13th stone stood in the middle, unmarked, but for a single rune that glowed faintly in the gathering darkness. As Leora approached from one side and Cassian from the other, a hush fell over the assembled wolves. Commander Darius and Lady Helena stood closest to the Alpha King, their expressions a study in contrast, the commander stoic and watchful, the lady barely concealing her outrage. "Moonsinger," Cassian acknowledged, his voice carrying across the silence. The title itself was a concession, a recognition of her true nature before all his court. "Alpha King," Leora replied with equal formality. Neither bowed to the other. High above, clouds parted, revealing the waning moon, no longer the blood-red fullness of the previous night, but still powerful, its light illuminating the stone circle with silvery radiance. "The trial of 7 moons begins," Leora announced, stepping into the circle. Cassian followed, his movements deliberate and controlled. They stood facing each other across the central stone, close enough to see the rise and fall of each other's breath, far enough that neither encroached upon the other's space. "What happens now?" he asked, his voice pitched low for her ears alone. "We wait," she answered. "The ancestors will set the first trial when the moon reaches its zenith." Around them, the court whispered and shifted. Some of the older wolves, those who remembered the ancient stories, explained in hushed tones what was happening. Others remained skeptical, convinced this was some elaborate trick, a challenge that would be quickly resolved in their king's favor. "You realize," Cassian said quietly, "that whatever happens here will change everything. Not just for us, but for all 12 territories." Leora met his gaze steadily. "That's rather the point. And if I win? If I pass all 7 trials? Will you accept my rule then, Leora Silverfang? Will your people?" An interesting question, one she had considered throughout the day as she prepared. "If you pass all 7 trials, your reign will be blessed by laws older than either of our houses. I will accept that." He studied her face, searching for deception. "And your role? What becomes of a moonsinger once balance is restored?" Before she could answer, the moon reached its highest point. The central stone between them flared with sudden brilliance, the single rune expanding into a complex pattern that spread across the entire circle. The 12 pillars resonated in response, each glowing with its pack's traditional color, blood moon crimson, Silverfang blue, and the hues of the 10 other major houses. A voice spoke, or perhaps it was many voices blended into one, neither male nor female, neither young nor old. It seemed to come from the stones themselves, from the air, from the ground beneath their feet. "The first trial is set," it announced. "The trial of truth." The runes shifted again, forming words in the ancient language of the wolf packs. Leora read them aloud for all to hear. "When conquest comes through deception's hand, truth becomes the first demand. King and singer bound as one must seek what was and what's begun. 3 truths hidden, 3 revealed, by dawn's first light, the past unsealed." Murmurs rippled through the crowd as they tried to make sense of the cryptic verse. Cassian's brow furrowed. "What does it mean?" he demanded. "Speak plainly, Moonsinger." Leora touched the central stone, feeling the vibrations of power beneath her fingers. The meaning unfolded in her mind, placed there by whatever force spoke through the ancient runes. "We must discover 3 hidden truths before dawn," she explained. "Truths about the conquest of Silverfang, and we must reveal 3 truths of our own." "We?" Cassian's eyes narrowed. "The trial binds us both?" "The trial of 7 moons is not simply your test, Alpha King. It is ours. We are bound together in this seeking of balance." His jaw tightened at that. "And how are we to discover these hidden truths in a single night?" As if in answer, the central stone pulsed once, and a mist rose from the ground, swirling around them both. Leora felt a tugging sensation, like invisible threads pulling at her consciousness. "I believe," she said slowly, "we are about to find out." The mist thickened, obscuring the watching crowd, until it seemed Leora and Cassian stood alone in a void of swirling silver. Then, gradually, shapes began to form within the mist. Trees, mountains, stone walls. "An illusion?" Cassian growled, his hand going instinctively to the sword at his hip. "A memory," Leora corrected, recognizing the scene taking shape around them. "My father's war council, 3 days before the fall." The great hall of Silverfang materialized completely, filled with ghostly figures seated around a massive oak table. At its head sat Alpha Thorn Silverfang, Leora's father, tall and imposing even in memory, his silver-streaked dark hair pulled back from a face lined with the cares of leadership. "Reports from the eastern border," a ghostly commander was saying. "Blood Moon forces have withdrawn. It appears they're abandoning the campaign." Murmurs of relief echoed around the table. Leora's breath caught at the familiar faces, her father's advisors, warriors she had known since childhood, all now dead. "It makes no sense," her father replied, his deep voice sending a pang through Leora's heart. "Cassian Bloodmoon does not retreat without reason." "Perhaps he has recognized the futility of his position," suggested Lady Marin, her father's chief strategist. "Winter approaches. His supply lines are stretched thin. A wise commander knows when to withdraw." Alpha Thorn's expression remained troubled. "Cassian Bloodmoon is many things, but a fool is not among them. This feels wrong." Beside Leora, the real Cassian watched with an unreadable expression, his eyes fixed on the ghostly form of her father. "What is this showing us?" he asked quietly. "I don't know yet," she admitted. "I was never permitted in these councils." The scene shifted, dissolving into mist before reforming. Now they stood in a smaller chamber, her father's private study. Alpha Thorn sat alone at his desk, examining a map by candlelight. The door opened, and a hooded figure slipped inside. "You have news?" Thorn asked without looking up. The figure lowered his hood, revealing a face Leora had never expected to see again. Valerian Gray, her father's spymaster, presumed dead in the initial assault. "It is as you feared, my Alpha," Valerian reported, his voice low and urgent. "The Blood Moon retreat is a feint. They circle around through the western passes, gathering strength from their allies. They plan to attack during the moon ceremony when our defenses are lowest." Thorn's face hardened. "How many houses have joined him?" 4, perhaps 5. "They smell blood in the water. They believe Silverfang has grown weak under your rule." "Because I seek peace rather than conquest?" Thorn's laugh held no humor. "The old ways die hard." Valerian stepped closer. "There is more. Blood Moon has promised the other houses a share in our territories, our resources, but he has not told them everything." "What do you mean?" "He knows about Leora." The spymaster's words fell like stones. "Someone has betrayed her secret. He comes not just for conquest, but for the Moonsinger." Leora's father rose so abruptly his chair crashed to the floor. "Impossible. No one outside our innermost circle knows. Who would—" He stopped, realization dawning. "Darius. It must be. He disappeared 3 weeks ago. Beside Leora, Cassian stiffened. My commander was in your father's service? He asked sharply. Before Leora could respond, the scene changed again. Now they stood in what appeared to be Cassian's war tent. 5 years earlier, the younger Cassian paced before a table covered with maps, his face leaner, his eyes burning with ambition. You're certain of this information? He demanded. Commander Darius, looking much the same as he did now, though with fewer battle scars, stood at attention before him. Yes, my king. Alpha Silverfang's daughter is a moonsinger. It manifested on her 18th birthday, during the last blood moon. The young Cassian's expression shifted from disbelief to calculation. A moonsinger, he murmured. After all these centuries, I thought they were legends. The Silverfang keep it closely guarded. The girl herself barely understands what she is. If we strike now, before she comes into her full power, we could control her, Cassian finished. A moonsinger bound to Blood Moon would give us dominion over all 12 territories. Darius nodded. The moon ceremony is in 3 days. Their defenses will be weakest then. The young Cassian smiled, a predator scenting prey. Then we attack at moonrise, and Darius, the Silverfang princess, must be taken alive. The mist swirled again, but this time when it cleared, they stood once more in the stone circle, the watching crowd still surrounding them though they seemed frozen in time. The moment suspended. Leora turned to face Cassian, who looked as shaken as she felt. You knew, she said quietly. You attacked us not just for territory, but for me, for what I am. Cassian did not immediately deny it. I knew Darius had discovered something important, something that would give us an advantage. But a moonsinger? He shook his head. I thought it was some new weapon, some alliance your father had forged. And yet you ordered me taken alive. I ordered that your father's heir be captured rather than killed, he corrected. Standard practice in conquest. Secure the bloodline to legitimize the claim. Leora studied his face, searching for deception. You expect me to believe you conquered my father's lands without knowing exactly why Darius had defected to your side? Without understanding the true prize? Something flashed in Cassian's eyes. Anger, perhaps, or something more complex. Believe what you will, Moonsinger, but the truth, since that is what this trial demands, is that I knew far less than you imagine. The mist rose again, surrounding them, and this time it revealed a scene Leora remembered all too well, the night of the conquest. Silverfang warriors fought desperately against overwhelming odds, as Blood Moon forces poured through breaches in their defenses. In the central courtyard, Alpha Thorn faced Cassian in single combat, both blood-spattered and battle-fierce. Leora watched, heart in her throat, as her father battled with all his legendary skill. But he was older, already wounded from earlier fighting, while Cassian was in his prime, driven by youth and ambition. The end, when it came, was swift and brutal. Cassian's sword found the gap in her father's armor, sliding between ribs to pierce his heart. Alpha Thorn fell to his knees, his eyes already dimming. For what it's worth, Cassian told the dying Alpha, you fought with honor. Thorn Silverfang laughed, blood bubbling at his lips. Honor means little to the dead boy. With his last strength, he grasped Cassian's wrist. You don't know what you've done, what you've unleashed. Then he was gone, collapsing to the stone, his final words hanging in the air. The scene shifted again, to the aftermath of battle. Cassian stood in Silverfang's throne room, victory secured but looking troubled as his officers brought forward prisoners, Leora among them, restrained and defiant, despite her torn clothing and the blood on her face from a cut above her eye. The princess, as ordered, Darius announced. Cassian approached her, studying her face. Is it true? He asked. Are you a moonsinger? The captured Leora spat at his feet. I am Leora Silverfang, daughter of Alpha Thorn, heir to the Northern Territories, and I will see you dead for what you've done here today. Search the castle, Cassian ordered, turning away from her. Find whatever documents, artifacts, or evidence might confirm what we've heard. The mist swirled once more, revealing a different chamber, Cassian's private quarters in the newly conquered palace. He sat alone, reading through a leather-bound journal by candlelight. Nothing, he muttered, tossing the book aside in frustration. No mention of a moonsinger, no secret records, no evidence at all. Darius entered, looking similarly frustrated. The archives have been thoroughly searched, my king. If there was documentation about the girl's abilities, it has been destroyed or hidden beyond our reach. And the girl herself? Refuses to speak of it, claims she doesn't know what we're talking about. Cassian rose, pacing the room. Perhaps we were misled. Perhaps it was a trap all along, designed to lure us into attacking. Then why did Alpha Silverfang seem so concerned when I reported the information? Why the panic? I don't know. Cassian stopped pacing, his decision clear. Regardless, we've won. Silverfang is ours. As for the princess, he paused. If she is a moonsinger, her power will reveal itself in time. Until then, we watch and wait. Assign her to the household staff, someplace unobtrusive but visible. Let her believe we've forgotten about her true identity. And if she shows signs of power, Cassian's expression hardened, then we will deal with it. One way or another. The mist dissolved for the final time, leaving Leora and Cassian standing once more in the stone circle, the frozen crowd still surrounding them. 3 truths had been revealed. Darius's betrayal, Cassian's knowledge of the Moonsinger's existence, and her father's last moments. 3 truths hidden, now revealed, Leora said softly. But we must also each offer 3 truths of our own. Cassian's jaw worked, as if he were chewing over something unpalatable. Very well. My first truth. I did not know you were a moonsinger when I first ordered the attack on Silverfang. Darius had reported only that there was some power, some advantage your father had concealed. The central stone pulsed, accepting his words as truth. My second truth. I have ruled the northern territories with less cruelty than my reputation suggests. I have maintained your father's laws where they were just, preserved Silverfang traditions where possible, and executed none who did not directly threaten my rule. Again, the stone pulsed in acknowledgement. Cassian hesitated before offering his final truth. My third truth. In 5 years of watching you serve in my court, I never once believed you were merely an Omega. I knew you were hiding something. Not just your heritage, but something more. Something that made you dangerous, despite your apparent submission. The stone accepted this as well, glowing brighter with each confirmed truth. Now it was Leora's turn. She took a deep breath, aware that whatever she said now would be known to all, would become part of the record of this night. My first truth. I have hated you, Cassian Bloodmoon, with every fiber of my being for 5 years. I have dreamed of your death 1,000 different ways. The stone pulsed, and Cassian's expression remained impassive, as if her hatred was expected, perhaps even deserved. My second truth. Despite that hatred, I have never plotted against your life, not because I feared failure, but because my father taught me that vengeance without justice is merely another form of tyranny. This time, when the stone pulsed, something flickered in Cassian's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or a reluctant respect. My third and final truth, Leora continued, her voice steady despite the weight of revelation, is that I do not know if I can restore the balance that was broken. The power of the Moonsinger flows through me, but I am still learning its purpose, still understanding what it means to stand between Alpha and Omega, between order and chaos. The central stone blazed with light as her words were accepted, and all at once, the moment unfroze. The watching crowd gasped as one, as if they had witnessed everything that had transpired between Leora and Cassian, though Leora suspected they had seen only the stone's acknowledgement of truth, not the visions themselves. The first trial is complete, announced the ancient voice from the stones. Truth has been given and received. The Alpha King has passed the first test. Relief visibly washed over Cassian's followers, while the Silverfang survivors looked to Leora with uncertainty in their eyes. Had she expected, that Cassian would fail the first trial? 6 more remain, Leora reminded them all, her voice carrying across the courtyard. 6 moons, 6 trials, before balance is restored. Cassian stepped forward, close enough that only she could hear his next words. You could have lied. Your third truth. You could have claimed certainty, claimed destiny. Why admit doubt? Leora met his gaze steadily. Because it is the truth. And because a leader who claims to have all the answers is either a fool or a liar. Something unexpected happened then. Cassian Bloodmoon, Alpha King, conqueror of the Northern Territories, smiled. Not the predatory smile she had seen in the visions, nor the cold, calculated expression he wore in court. This was genuine, touched with irony and perhaps a hint of newfound respect. On that at least, Moonsinger, we agree. As the crowd dispersed, Leora found herself walking back toward the North Tower alongside Ren and the other Silverfang survivors. Their expressions ranged from confusion to disappointment. "He passed the first trial," Ren said, his voice low and troubled. "Does that mean, will he remain our king?" "6 more trials remain," Leora reminded him gently. "Much can change. But you saw the truth." Another servant. "No, not a servant anymore," she corrected herself, said. "He attacked us for you, for your power. He doesn't deserve to rule." Leora stopped, turning to face them all. "What I saw was more complicated than that. The truth often is." She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "The Alpha King is not the monster we have painted him to be these past 5 years, nor is he the hero his people believe him to be. He is something in between, as most of us are." "So we just forgive him?" Ren demanded, his youthful face flushed with indignation. "After everything he did to us?" "No," Leora said firmly, "but we remember that justice is not the same as vengeance. The ancient laws were not invoked merely to punish Cassian Bloodmoon, but to restore balance to all 12 territories." Later, alone in her mother's chambers in the North Tower, Leora stood at the window, watching the moon begin its descent toward the horizon. 1 trial complete, 6 remaining. Each would test different aspects of leadership, of character, of worthiness to rule. And each, she suspected, would reveal more about both Cassian and herself than either of them might want known. A knock at her door startled her from her thoughts. "Enter," she called, expecting Ren with a late meal, or perhaps one of the Silverfang elders with questions about the night's revelations. Instead, Cassian Bloodmoon himself stood in the doorway, no longer in his ceremonial armor, but dressed simply in a dark tunic and trousers. He carried a small wooden box under one arm. "Alpha King," Leora acknowledged, surprised but careful not to show it. "I didn't expect you." Clearly, he remained at the threshold, not entering without permission, a courtesy she had not anticipated. "May I come in?" She gestured him forward, curious about this unexpected visit. "What brings you to the North Tower at this hour?" Cassian placed the wooden box on the table between them. It was old, the wood darkened with age and polished by countless hands. The Silverfang sigil was carved into its lid. "After the conquest," he said without preamble, "I ordered Darius to search for any evidence of a Moonsinger's presence. Documentation, artifacts, anything that might confirm what he had reported. I saw as much in the visions," Leora noted. "What you didn't see was what we eventually found, hidden in a secret compartment beneath your father's desk." He pushed the box toward her. "This was meant for you, I believe." Cautiously, Leora opened the lid. Inside lay a silver pendant on a fine chain, a crescent moon cradling a single star, set with a moonstone that seemed to glow from within. Beneath it was a folded letter, sealed with her father's personal sigil. Her hands trembled slightly as she broke the seal and unfolded the parchment. Her father's bold handwriting filled the page, addressed to her. "My dearest Leora," it began, "if you are reading this, then I have failed to protect you and our people from those who would seek to control your gift. The pendant enclosed is an heirloom passed down through generations, last worn by a Moonsinger 3 centuries ago. It will help you focus your abilities as they grow." Leora looked up sharply. "You've read this?" Cassian nodded, unapologetic. "I had it translated from the old language. Your father was clever to write it in a tongue few remember." She returned to the letter, skimming quickly. "A Moonsinger's path is never easy. You stand between worlds, neither Alpha nor Omega, but something greater than both. Your power will grow with each blood moon until the 5th, when you will reach the fullness of your abilities. Remember that a Moonsinger's purpose is not dominance, but balance. In the ancient days, when the 12 territories were first established, it was a Moonsinger who created the covenant between packs, who established the laws that have governed us for centuries. Trust your instincts, my daughter. The ancestors will guide you, and know that whatever happens, I am proud of the wolf you have become. With all my love, your father." Tears burned in Leora's eyes as she carefully refolded the letter. "You've had this for 5 years, she said quietly. "Why give it to me now?" Cassian moved to the window, his profile sharp against the night sky. "Because the trial of truth revealed what I have long suspected, that we were manipulated into war. Someone wanted me to attack Silverfang, wanted me to seize a moonsinger for my own purposes. Darius. Perhaps. But Darius is a soldier, not a schemer. Cassian turned to face her. Someone else was pulling strings. Someone with knowledge of ancient powers and the patience to wait centuries for a moonsinger to be born. Leora's mind raced, piecing together fragments of the night's revelations. You believe someone wanted you to capture me before I came into my power, to control me. I believe, Cassian said carefully, that the same forces that whispered secrets in Darius's ear have been manipulating the 12 territories for generations, keeping us at each other's throats, preventing the kind of unity that might challenge something else. It was a disturbing thought, one that reframed the last 5 years, the last 5 centuries perhaps, in an entirely new light. The trial of 7 moons may reveal more than either of us anticipated, Leora said, fingering the silver pendant. Or intended. Indeed. Cassian moved toward the door, then paused. When my father died and I became Alpha, I swore to unite the territories under Blood Moon rule. I believed it was the only way to end centuries of petty conflicts, to create the kind of stability our people deserve. Through conquest, Leora observed. It seemed the most direct path. A wry smile touched his lips. Perhaps there are others. After he left, Leora stood for a long time at the window, the pendant clutched in her hand, her father's letter pressed to her heart. Outside, the waning moon continued its journey across the star-filled sky, carrying with it the promise of 6 more trials, 6 more revelations. In the stories she had been told as a child, moonsingers were always portrayed as instruments of justice, as the moon's chosen vessels to right ancient wrongs. None of those tales had prepared her for the reality, the complexity of truth, the weight of power, the responsibility of restoration. As dawn approached, painting the eastern sky with the first blush of light, Leora Silverfang, princess and moonsinger, finally understood the true challenge that lay before her, not merely to dethrone a conqueror or avenge a fallen pack, but to weave a new future from the tangled threads of past and present. She clasped the pendant around her neck, feeling its power resonate with her own. Whatever came next, whatever the remaining 6 trials might reveal, she would face it with open eyes and a clear heart. The balance would be restored. The question was, what form would that restoration take? As the sun crested the horizon, banishing the last shadows of night, Leora smiled for the first time in 5 years, not with bitterness or revenge, but with hope. The Alpha King had underestimated her once. He wouldn't make that mistake again. And perhaps, just perhaps, she had underestimated him as well. The future beckoned, uncertain but filled with possibility, as the first light of a new day washed over the 12 territories. The full moon shone over the 12 territories, its reflection dancing across the waters of the Great Lake that marked the center of their united borders. 5 years had passed since the trial of 7 moons, and the political landscape of the Wolf Kingdoms had been redrawn as completely as the maps that now adorned the Great Hall. Leora Silverfang observed the assembly from her elevated seat, her watchful gaze traveling over the representatives of each territory. No longer segregated by status or origin, they were arranged in a wide circle where all could see and be seen equally. The pendant at her throat, the silver moon cradling a single star, glowed softly in the torchlight, marking her not as ruler, but as something the 12 territories hadn't seen in centuries, a mediator. A moonsinger who stood between pack and pack, between Alpha and Omega, maintaining the balance that had been restored through blood and truth. Cassian Blood Moon entered the hall, drawing all eyes with his commanding presence. No longer the conquering Alpha King, but still an Alpha of tremendous power and influence. He had changed as much as the territories themselves, the ruthless ambition tempered by wisdom, the drive for dominance transformed into something more collaborative, more patient. The delegates from the eastern shore have arrived, he announced, taking his place in the circle. Not at Leora's side, but across from her, the symbolic arrangement emphasizing their complementary yet separate roles in the new order. Then we may begin, Leora nodded, rising to her feet. Her voice, laced with the harmonic power of a moonsinger in her prime, carried effortlessly to every corner of the hall. The Council of Territories is now in session. As the representatives began their reports, Leora caught Cassian's eye across the circle, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. They had both been transformed by the trials. each challenge revealing more about themselves and each other than either had anticipated. The second trial had tested courage, forcing them to face their deepest fears side by side. The third had demanded sacrifice, asking what each would surrender for the greater good. The fourth had been a trial of mercy, challenging preconceptions about strength and weakness. The fifth had tested wisdom, requiring judgment, untainted by personal feeling. The sixth had been about healing, confronting the wounds of the past to create possibility for the future. And the seventh, the final trial on the night of the blood moon, had been about transformation, not the destruction of the old order, but its evolution into something neither of them could have envisioned alone. "The Northern Territories report an exceptional harvest," announced Wren, now a young man grown into his role as Silverfang's representative. "We will have surplus to share with the Western Valleys, as agreed in last season's trade accords." Leora smiled with quiet pride. The North thrived again under joint governance. Silverfang tradition married to Blood Moon innovation, creating prosperity neither pack could have achieved in isolation. As the council progressed, Leora's thoughts drifted momentarily to the journey that had brought them here, to the final revelations of the seventh trial, when the true manipulator had been unmasked, an ancient power working from the shadows, fostering conflict between the territories to prevent their unity. That threat had been neutralized, though not without cost. The scars of that final battle were still visible in the rebuilt eastern wing of the palace, in the silver streak that now ran through Cassian's dark hair, in the fine lines that appeared around Leora's eyes when she used the fullness of her power. After the council adjourned, Leora made her way to the North Tower, which remained her residence despite the many changes to the palace. The night air was crisp with approaching autumn as she stepped onto the balcony, gazing out at the territories that stretched before her, no longer divided by hatred and conquest, but united in an alliance stronger than any single rule could have forged. The door opened behind her, and she didn't need to turn to know who had followed. 5 years, Cassian said, moving to stand beside her at the railing. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday, and sometimes like a lifetime ago," Leora agreed, her eyes still on the horizon. They stood in companionable silence, the kind that comes only after traversing the most treacherous paths together. They were not mates, not in the traditional sense. The bond between them defied conventional categorization, forged in trial and transformation, in shared purpose rather than instinctual claiming. "The delegates were impressed by your handling of the boundary dispute," Cassian noted, a hint of amusement in his voice, "particularly when you made Lord Anton apologize to the Omega representative from Stonecrest." Leora's lips curved slightly. "Some alphas still need reminding that status isn't the same as worth. A lesson I learned the hard way," he acknowledged, his gaze lingering on her profile. 5 years ago, such scrutiny would have made her bristle with suspicion. Now, she met his eyes with calm assurance, knowing what she would find there: respect, understanding, and something more complex that neither of them had fully defined. "Do you ever wonder," she asked quietly, "what would have happened if I hadn't invoked the trial of 7 moons that night? If I'd simply taken my revenge?" "Frequently." Cassian's answer came without hesitation. "I would have deserved it. And yet here we stand." "Here we stand," he echoed. "Better rulers than we would have been separately, I think." Leora nodded slowly. The ancestors knew what they were doing when they established the trials. True balance isn't found in dominance or submission, but in partnership, in recognizing that different strengths can complement rather than compete. A shooting star traced a brilliant path across the night sky, and they both watched its journey in silence. When it faded, Cassian spoke again, his voice pitched low for her ears alone. "I underestimated you once, Leora Silverfang." She turned to him, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "A mistake you only made once, Alpha Blood Moon." His answering smile held the warmth few beyond these private moments ever witnessed. "The greatest mistake of my life, and the most fortunate one as well." As they turned back to the view, shoulder to shoulder at the threshold between past and future, Leora reflected on the unexpected path that had led them here. From servant to moonsinger, from conquered to collaborator, from sworn enemies to whatever they were now. The moon continued its eternal watch over the 12 territories, its light falling equally on Alpha and Omega, on Blood Moon and Silverfang, on all who dwelled beneath its silvery gaze, and in that light, balance prevailed. Not perfect, not without struggle, but enduring. The Alpha King had underestimated the Omega Princess. She had underestimated him in turn. Their greatest strength had come in recognizing those mistakes and building something new from the shattered pieces of what came before. And across the 12 territories, wolves of every rank and pack lived in the world that understanding had created. If you enjoyed this story, a like or comment really helps. And if you wish to hear more tales like this one, make sure you subscribe so you never miss the next tale.